What is happening, baby? Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Huddle presented by the Huddle Chat Sports Show. I'm your host, as always, Dallas Clark. Today, we're getting a big trade deadline episode going in with the real life trade deadline going on in the NFL this past week and a couple of big moves happening. We're going to discuss those moves, the winners and losers of those trades. And we're also going to get into a deep dive of the buy low, sell high players that you should be targeting in your fantasy football league as we approach these final few weeks and you get to that push towards the playoffs. As I said, we're getting in with those trades that happened earlier this week. There was a couple of big ones, really three that were mainly fantasy football relevant. You're looking at Rashid Shaheed headed to the Seattle Seahawks. His deep threat profile is a perfect match for Sam Darnold's league-leading deep passing. His ceiling is higher, but his floor remains low. Chris Olave will receive a target bump over back in New Orleans with Rashid Shaheed, the number 2 wide receiver, being gone. You're looking at Cooper Kupp being a loser in this trade with the Seattle Seahawks. You're looking at Rashid Shaheed becoming that number 2 wide receiver that Cooper Kupp just has not been able to become this season. You're also looking at Jacoby Myers heading over to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Really, the main winner is going to be Trevor Lawrence. You're looking at Parker Washington being a kind of bit of a loser in this. And you're also looking at Brock Bowers, believe it or not, being a loser in this. And you may have seen it over here on this last Thursday night football game that we watched just a couple days ago. You look at Jacoby Myers escaping the Brock Bowers target competition and becoming the reliable wide receiver 2 that the Jacksonville Jaguars have desperately needed all season long. Jacoby Myers is a solid buy low flex option at the current moment. Parker Washington becomes immediately droppable if you even have him on your roster. And then you're looking at Brock Bowers now not having target competition. You're looking at him being the sole focus of that defensive attention here when it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders here in the future. Now you're looking at Adonai Mitchell moving over to the New York Jets in the Sauce Gardner train. Shouts out to the Indianapolis Colts for getting that Sauce Gardner trade off. We may have paid more than people may have think that we should have for Sauce Gardner. However, when you're looking at what this team has, what Sauce can bring to this team, it's exactly what the Indianapolis Colts need, and I'm very excited about it. And not only that, they got rid of Adonai Mitchell, a wide receiver that had a lot of potential, but has made some boneheaded plays, some big mistakes that have really just put his future with the Indianapolis Colts in doubt, and a fresh start is probably the best thing for Adonai Mitchell. The Colts wide receiver room is all going to be winners in this trade. You're looking at them being less target share, less competition throughout the rest of the roster. That's going to be big for that Colts wide receiver room. And then you're looking at in this being a purely future focused move. This isn't something that I'm really going to be making really any decisions on my fantasy football roster with this Adonai Mitchell trade. You're looking at this being something that really you're looking at them locking up a future wide receiver. Adonai Mitchell has a clear path to playing time as the Jets wide receiver 2, but with this terrible quarterback situation, I really don't trust anything with the New York Jets when it comes to wide receivers, except for Garrett Wilson, of course. But you're looking at Adonai Mitchell having a clear path to playing time. Like I said, with the terrible quarterback situation, though, this year, it's going to limit any ceiling that he has. He's a deep dynasty keeper or a stash player, really only that you can look at for Adonai Mitchell. Now, the first buy low player we're going to be talking about is going to be Bijan Robinson. He's got immense volume so far in this offense, and in his entire career, he's had immense volume in this offense. You're looking at Bijan Robinson being used in this offense very heavily. They're just not translating into touchdowns at the current moment. You're looking at them not scoring touchdowns, but that can only last for so long, and you never really want to depend on touchdown ability anyway. But you're looking at what he's been able to do without scoring touchdowns. Once he starts getting it together and starts finding that end zone a couple times of this next few weeks, it's going to break out well for the owner of Bijan Robinson. You're looking at him having an extremely easy fantasy football playoff schedule in those last few weeks of the season as well. So I'm looking at offering a high-end wide receiver 2 and a flex or a running back 2 as a starting point for this trade. You may end up having to negotiate for a while. Bijan Robinson is one of the hottest commodities that you can go after for in a trade, even in a buy low situation. But this is the lowest that his value is going to be for the entirety of the season, and that it's been all of his entire career, most likely. So you're looking at the fact that Bijan Robinson is a solid buy low target at the current moment. Next buy low we're going to be talking about is going to be CeeDee Lamb from the Dallas Cowboys. Coming off that injury, you're looking at him having that elite target share. He still sees wide receiver 1 level targets, and he's had a touchdown regression. And he's due for some touchdowns as well in these next few weeks. You're looking at this touchdown ability being up for positive regression here for CeeDee Lamb. You're looking at the results being volatile for CeeDee Lamb this season, which is what's making the owner of CeeDee Lamb very frustrated and willing to move CeeDee Lamb at this current moment. You're looking at offering an underperforming wide receiver, a top 24 wide receiver that's just been underperforming to you, that has a positive outlook, somebody like a Terry McLaurin, and you're going to add a solid bench running back wide receiver to this trade as well as a great starting point for this trade. The next buy low target we're going to be getting at is going to be George Kittle from the San Francisco 49ers. Injuries are starting to kind of clear. The fogginess is starting to dissipate here in San Francisco. The breakout is coming for George Kittle. George Kittle has a track record of monster second half performances and playoff production. The 49ers are only getting healthier and they're only getting better. His recent dip in targets should be taken with a grain of salt, just straight due to the fact that with Brock Purdy being injured, with Juwan Jennings being injured, with all of the injuries and all of the key players and key parts and pieces around George Kittle, you're looking at this all having to be taken with a grain of salt. As the San Francisco 49ers continue to get healthier throughout the remainder of the season, things can only get better for them. Right now, I'm offering my current streamable tight end and an expendable running back for George Kittle, trying to lock up that tight end position going into the playoffs. Now, the next wide receiver we want to discuss is going to be Nico Collins from the Houston Texans. You're looking at Nico Collins. His usage and yardage when healthy are absolutely amazing. You're looking at him being due for a massive positive regression in touchdowns just due to the fact that he's been getting down the field and just not in the end zone. Same thing. It's a similar story with the San Francisco 49ers. The Houston Texans have had a lot of moving and shaking going on so far this year. And truthfully, it's just been a rough year for the Houston Texans and for Nico Collins and Nico Collins owners. So you're looking at the fact that Nico Collins is due to get into that end zone a couple times. His value has been depressed this season just due to the straight fact that you're having him off those recent injuries and the offensive struggles that we just recently talked about. Right now, I feel like you can safely offer a bench running back coming off of a spike week, focused on that recency bias, and try to lock in Nico Collins as a starting point for this trade. Now, the next move that we're going to be talking about in this is going to be Ramondre Stevenson from the New England Patriots. He's the clear bell cow in this offense. The backfield is his. You're looking at his current struggle being due to the offense being just awful, not having great game script for them. The Patriots have been playing great, don't get me wrong, but the offense has not been putting Ramondre Stevenson in a position in game script to run the ball as much as you'd like. The volume has been too high for you to ignore for Ramondre Stevenson. He's a high floor running back too for the fantasy playoffs coming up, and he's got a decent schedule in the playoffs. Right now, I'm offering a wide receiver 3 / a flex with a similar floor. Somebody like a Christian Kirk, somebody that has upside, but you're just tired of playing the game with, and you want to lock up that running back position that you so desperately have needed for the remainder of the season. Now, the last buy low target we're going to talk about, and I mentioned him earlier, we're going to be talking about Garrett Wilson here on this list. We're looking at this is one of those situations where you want to focus on talent over the situation. You're seeing the elite volume despite this terrible quarterback play in New York. His talent means that any given Sunday he can boom. You're looking at him being able to take the top off a defense at any given time. The only problem is he has such a volatile floor. And that's been the problem with Garrett Wilson. And that's why you may be able to go out and get him in a trade at the current moment, because right now you can offer your volatile quarterback or tight end with an unexciting but safe wide receiver 3. And you may be able to get this trade off at least a good starting point for negotiations in this trade. Garrett Wilson is somebody that I wouldn't mind having as my number 2 wide receiver, even my number 3 wide receiver behind somebody like a Drake London, Amon-Ra combo. Garrett Wilson would fit in perfectly right there. So if you're trying to lock up those points from week to week to week, figure out what that flex is throughout the fantasy football playoffs, Garrett Wilson could definitely be your guy, and he's somebody that I would be going in on. Now, before we wrap things up, of course, we want to talk about the sell high players, and this might surprise some people. The number 1 player on my sell high list right now is going to be Jonathan Taylor. Right now, you're looking at selling him at his value peak. He's currently rated as the number 3 running back due to his sustained production. If you're a rebuilder, if you're a person that's really trying to maximize your points getting into the playoffs, if you're somebody that's really trying to win every single game getting into these playoffs, getting rid of Jonathan Taylor may be the best thing that can happen for you. Jonathan Taylor is one of those running backs. You can secure a running back and a solid starting wide receiver as well by getting rid of Jonathan Taylor at his highest peak possible price that you can get him for at the current moment. You're looking at maybe aiming for an elite wide receiver in A.J. Brown with a high-end running back too, maybe some future draft capital if you're in a dynasty league. But you're looking at Jonathan Taylor. Of course, I'd love to keep Jonathan Taylor. But if you need to make some moves, if you need to get some pieces, Jonathan Taylor right now might be the player that you need to sell. Next player on this list is going to be Caleb Williams from the Chicago Bears. He just put up a massive spike week. This is the highest trade value he's had all year. His low consistency and tough remaining schedule make him a risky playoff start. I'm going in for a locked-in wide receiver too, like a Garrett Wilson, a consistent running back too, if I can lock in a running back too, like a Jalen Warren, somebody like that for Caleb Williams, for somebody that desperately needs a quarterback. Then you're looking at Terry McLaurin from the Washington Commanders. He's got a lot of quarterback uncertainty, especially with this Jaden Daniels injury. It's a revolving door right now with this Washington Commanders. It's going to cap his already pretty low ceiling when it comes to Terry McLaurin. However, you're looking at you're being able to still sell the name value before seeing the big dip. So let somebody buy the dip on Terry McLaurin right now. Might be a good time to get rid of him, just because you may not be confident yourself in what Terry McLaurin can do. I'm taking an upside bench stash and a small pick upgrade if I can get that out of Terry McLaurin. Now, next one on this list is going to be Sam Laporta. Sammy L. He's got unjustified volume. His touchdown rate has been completely unsustainable. The Lions have a crowded target tree. Sell him to a tight end needy contender immediately this week after his big game. You're looking at an equivalent value running back or wide receiver that could give you more weekly certainty than Sam Laporta, and being able to go out and get one of those streamer tight ends, being able to steal their streamer tight end. Whatever you may be able to do, Sam Laporta might be able to get you some new pieces. Derrick Henry from the Baltimore Ravens. You're looking at the schedule. Their offense has been struggling. The Ravens' late season schedule is brutal. Sell his name and his brand to a team that believes in the playoff magic of Derrick Henry. If you need somebody to get up into those playoffs, you can't count on Derrick Henry in the playoffs if you can't make the playoffs. So sell him to somebody that believes in the playoff magic of Derrick Henry while you get the better pieces and reap the benefits. And then last but not least, we're talking about Cortland Sutton, unsustainable touchdown production, just like we talked about with Sam Laporta. His entire value is based on touchdowns, and we never want to guarantee touchdown production. His target volume is low. His yardage floor is awful. This is a classic sell high before his regression is getting ready to hit. You saw what the Denver Broncos looked like on Thursday night. You do not want to be a piece of this Denver Broncos offense on your fantasy football team going through the remainder of the season. They have one of the hardest rest of season schedules, and the Denver Broncos, they're not that guy, pal. I can promise you guys right now, the Denver Broncos are not as good as they seem. Do not believe the hype with the Denver Broncos. Like I said, I'm aiming for a locked-in wide receiver 3 and a throw-in. You know what I'm saying? I'm taking 2 pieces if I can for Cortland Sutton. I'm not going 1 for 1 if I can avoid it. But like I said, I want to avoid being in this Denver Broncos just mess of a backfield as much as I possibly can. Now, of course, I want to wrap things up today. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the episode. If you haven't yet, make sure you smash that like button and hit that subscriptions bar as well as that notifications bell, just so that way you always know what's coming up. But before we wrap the show up with my usual send off for you guys, I want to just take a serious moment. I know that this show is mostly fun. It's mostly stats. It's mostly jokes. A lot of them being bad jokes. But even though I have a small platform, it's still a platform. And I wanted to make a point to mention that the Movember is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I need to acknowledge the fight that many of us are having behind the screens on the other side of these phones. To my largely male viewership and to anybody else, it's okay to not be okay. That phrase does get thrown around a lot, but I want you to know that I mean it. If you're struggling, and I mean it, if you are struggling, please know that you are absolutely not alone. It's not a sign of weakness to reach out for help. In fact, it's the ultimate sign of strength to reach out for some help. And look, if you truly feel like you have nobody that you can talk to, reach out to me. Send me a DM, send me an email, drop a comment in the YouTube here. We're a community here. We support each other. Please do not suffer in silence. That's what I don't want you guys to do. Take that moment, be good to you guys yourself, and remember that your health is your wealth. Mental health is still health. But like I said, everybody, I just wanted to take a quick moment to mention that. With that being said, I'd like to end the episode the same way that I always do. If you guys have any questions, make sure you drop them down in the comments below. And as always, keep your chin up and your attitude down. And I'm going to see y'all next time. Peace out.